this video is about Jezebel, but it coincides with the other video, so I'll put them in the description of each other, but they're not necessarily like to be watched together because it's just conversation, really. But the ideology of Jezebel doesn't make sense. So, like, for example, my parents prostituted me, but then my dad told me that if I got pregnant, that he would kick me out. But it's like, you could just not prostitute me, so then I wouldn't get pregnant. Or I remember one time he was saying that he was saying he wanted money or he wanted to make money, and I remember I was like, oh, well, why don't you just play the lottery? You can win the lottery, or play some scratch offs. No, I said the lottery, and he was like, well, God told me that He's gonna make me rich without the lottery, so I don't want to do that. And then I was like, thinking years later, I think it was last year or this year, but I was like, so you're telling me that you and God had a conversation about not playing the lottery, but you're telling me that God didn't tell you that you should not assault children or not be a pedophile? How does that make sense? And then, let's see, what else? For example, if I went on my dad's Facebook page, he calls himself a Christian and people know him as a Christian, but he's promoting Buddhism on his Facebook, or or um, or also the fact that my dad could have just got a job. He never like maintained a job, so he also could have just got a job and worked that. Because every time I saw him get jobs, he always self-sabotaged them, or he just didn't do it the way he was supposed to. He always like half did stuff. And then, or for example, my parents are both supposed to be fronting as Christians, but they watch the most raunchiest movies I've ever watched or heard of in my life, stuff that I am not even capable of watching. And they also do repeated sins. Jezebel does repeated sins. They'll do witchcraft forever. They'll do manipulation techniques forever. They don't feel bad about it. That's loud, I think. I don't know if you can hear that. But yeah, they just do repeated sin. They also want, and if they're in a blood covenant like my parents are, they're in a blood covenant with Satan to just do evil. They will want you to continue the same sins of the bloodline. So like, for example, my parents will always tell me that when my siblings were in school that they both forged my parents' signature to their teachers, and they both got caught, and then they both got in trouble, and then they got spankings, and they used to repeat that to me constantly. And I was like, oh, because they're saying that to me, they must mean that I should not do that, so I don't get a spanking. But that's not what they wanted. They wanted me to do that so that we all did the same thing, so that the lying, the manipulation would continue on the bloodline. But I didn't see it as that. To me, I was like, oh, that's a lesson, don't do that. So I never did it. But that's not what they wanted. They were unhappy that I didn't do that. They also send other people to do their manipulation and to do checkups on you. Jezebel will have a group of people that likes to come to you to ask you intrusive questions to see where you are in the timeline of life, because some of them have access to the spirit realm in a default way. So they will send other people that you're not necessarily friends with, but you're acquainted with, that they're also acquainted with, so that person could go behind your back to tell the narcissist or Jezebel about you and inform them about you, because they want to know where you are, they want to know what you're doing, they want to know how your life is progressing and if the stuff they're doing is working. They also like to isolate you, especially when it's a group of Jezebel usually has multiple people in their circle, so they like to isolate you and pull actually a good example of them sending other people towards you is like, for example, when I got away from my parents, my mom would send her aunt or one of my cousins to see where I was, and then the cousin or the aunt will report back to where I was. Like, I think 3 years ago, for example, I had a police call with my family that was for the police to see if my mom would admit anything on the phone about the abuse that I went through with my family. And I called her. The cop was on the other line and my mom was on the other line. They were listening, and I just tried to get her to, I tried to trigger her so that she would admit to stuff she did. She did admit to choking me though. She didn't admit to anything else though. But after that happened, instead of her calling me, because I hadn't called her in years at that point, I think it had been like, I don't even know how long, but her sister, my mom's sister, called me and then was like, hey, why'd you call your mom? And it's like, why are you calling me to ask me why I called my mom? I mean, we weren't talking, but the fact that you're being sent by the narcissist to do their bidding and you're like in this, it's all toxic. It's not safe. It's not helping you. It's not helping them. And it doesn't do anything to me because God is already ahead. So they like to send other people. They like to have those people spread their lives and their rhetoric so that their rhetoric also isolates you. When me and my husband, now husband, first ended up homeless, my mom spread lies that I was prostituting. She spread lies that my husband was abusing me and that he was basically my pimp to my cousin and to her friends. And she told people that I had found a place when I was literally living in a car. And because of that, more people stopped talking to me, or more people stopped talking to me, or they had an idea of what was going on that was not true because of Jezebel's lies. And they isolate you, so you also don't have like for example, when I was younger, I would meet women or men just as friends, and or even if they weren't, specifically guys at that point, if they were toxic, my parents allowed them to stay. If they were someone that could help me or someone that could teach me to not be toxic or manipulative, because at that time I was manipulative, but I didn't know I was because I was so used to being manipulated. So I followed what I was being taught. So like they would isolate me from healthy people, and they would try to keep me around toxic people so that I would stay within that. And then they like to imitate you. I have realized this past year that the person that my parents pretend to be is the person I am now with Christ. They like to, and they also imitated me when I still had a relationship with Christ, but I wasn't as I am now. And even the poor version of you that's getting to Christ is still, I don't want to say better, but it's still more holy than the version of them as a narcissist or a Jezebel. So, for example, at that time, I had DID, I had dissociative identity disorder or fragmented soul. So I was operating under false identities, and my style was different. And they would copy that style. I used to make up words. People would copy my words. People would copy my style. My sister, I remember around the time I was homeless, I would go and get my mail from the house, and then I would still be living in the car. And she saw me, and they were like, "Oh, you cut your hair?" And I was like, "Yeah, I cut my hair." And then I came back and saw them like 2 months later, and they had the same hairstyle. Or my mom, I used to like those choker bracelets. Not me, but my personality's alters did. And they used to wear those. My mom started wearing those. And my mom was 50. And I'm like, what? If she was 50, I was probably a teen or like in middle school. And my mom's copying me. So yeah, they copy you to try to be you, to try to get the favor that you have. The They think that copying you will make them more legit in the eyes of fooling other people, but it also is because they think that the outside is what makes you who Christ wants you to be. They don't understand Jezebel, as well as they don't have an identity, so they think that copying your visual identity will help them, will show what your spiritual identity or soul is. Spiritual, I would say spirit side, because your soul still needs help. All of our souls need help. That's why we're here. Anyway, but yeah, they try to imitate you. A lot of and you know, all those people that are like flatteries, like imitation is a form of compliment. It is not. It is not. Don't believe that. That's a form of somebody trying to be like you, be you, and that's also a sign that somebody lacks identity. Those people are people you don't want around, because usually it grows, it doesn't stop, or you need to leave. Do not follow that. Do not believe that that's a great thing. It's not. It's also very annoying. People still do that to me now. Not as much now, but like people still, I still see it, is my point. They also try to make you, they also try to cause you to be dependent on them. Like my family, when I was younger, especially, it worked a lot better then because I was a child. I felt like I would not survive if something happened to my parents. And I know like people already feel that way because they're like dependent on their parents, but this is like a level of dependency where it's like if something happens to them, how do I live? How do I move on? Where do I go? I can't take care of myself mindset. Like Tangled. Think about Tangled. Like how when she got out of being around Mother Gothel, she was like, what do I do? She's like, this is great. And then she's like, I don't know what to do with myself. Like that's how it was. It was very toxic. And it was very like, I don't love you, but I want you to stay here and do everything for me. And if you try to leave me, then you're just, nothing's gonna work for you. That's how it was. That's how Jezebel is. That's how they act. That's how my family was. For example, if I wanted to cross the street to go to the store or to walk to the library, my mom would be like, how do you get there? What if someone hurts you? What if you get lost? And this was when Google was still fairly cemented. I could use a map. I could bring a knife. I could get a dog. I could get a friend. We could walk to the store. Those are all solutions. But in their mind, in my mind, I was like, I can't do that. Because my mom said it's unsafe. Because it's not secure. Because something can happen. Yeah, they put fear in you to try to keep you in their pocket, in their circle, as well as I became older, my mom, I remember one time I wanted to work at a movie theater, and the job would have required me to wake up earlier and probably take Uber rides to get there. and I would be essentially leaving before any of them were up, which would have been great for me because anytime I was not around them, I became healthier. But when I was with them, suffered. Anyway, so when I wanted to take the job, my mom was like, if you take that job, I'm not going to give you food and I'm not going to take care of you and I'm not going to support you. And at that point, I financially was pretty bad off. Actually, no, I wanted to walk there. It was like 20 minutes, and I've literally done 3-hour walks before, but I was like, yeah, I could make this 20-minute walk. I'll be totally okay. And I cried at the time because I was like, how cold, callous, unkind for you to literally know that I have no money and you don't want to help me or help me to have solutions to be able to do what I need to do. So yeah, I was hurt. So as well as because I made money at that time, they knew how much I made. I was required to tell them what I made. And you may say like, oh, you have free will. I did not. I did, but I didn't know it. I had freedom, but I didn't know it because I was like imprisoned in my mind and in my heart, in my soul, because I felt like I had to please God. I mean, I felt like I had to please my parents to be able to be alive. I didn't know my identity. I didn't know that I was supposed to please God and that I was supposed to put them like less. And now, nothing. They're not in the system. They're not in my brain. If that makes sense. That was really meta right now. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do that. But what I'm saying is God, parents. But at that time it was parents, because they knew how much I made. Everything I had went to them because that was the system that was in the family. I had to ask to eat. I couldn't go in the kitchen just get food if I wanted to get food. I had to share food if there was food to have. I didn't have the freedom to go places. If I wanted to go to the store, I had to bribe my dad by buying him food, or if they were getting something out of it, then they would help me. If it wasn't benefiting them, they didn't help me. And if, for example, at one point I had 2 jobs, didn't want to take me to my 2 jobs because it was too much work to drive me, even though my dad didn't even work. So yeah, all your resources are funneled through them. And so when your resources are funneled through the Jezebel, it puts you in a situation where it's like, if I'm not in good standing with this person is going to like wreck my life. And that, truthfully, that wasn't even my life. That wasn't the life God intended for me. We're not meant to be dependent on Jezebel. We're not meant to be dependent on people. If people around you are funneling all your resources, if they're telling you that you can't live without them, if they're telling you, oh, I'm gonna hurt myself because blah blah blah, or we're not friends unless you serve me, that is Jezebel. If their ideology makes sense, if don't make sense, if they say they're for God, but you see them fornicating, you see them, I don't know, stabbing people, if they Wolverining out here, they mean, they shaming people, you know, those are not fruits of the Spirit. That is not the Jesus. We need to go away from that. And if they have any of these things, Jezebel, but if their fruit is also not holy, not Jesus, not Christian, Jezebel likes to make it seems like she's Christian. She is not Christian. My family are witches. I'm having too much fun. Anyway, my family is not Christians. My mom is a witch. My dad is a warlock. And they always fronted as if they always pretended like they were Christians. They are not. Jezebel's not a Christian. Jezebel's a liar. Jezebel likes to make lies, and it don't make sense. Like the logic and the spirituality don't make sense. So look at that to see what is going on, and if the people around you or if yourself is a Jezebel, ask God for forgiveness, because literally Jezebel got eaten by dogs. I don't think people probably gonna get eaten by dogs in real life, but you never know. People think that Jesus is not mauling people, but he is still. It just looks differently because we're not in the same century as they were. But he's still doing the same punishments. You just don't know about it. All these mysterious deaths, all this weird stuff. That's the Jesus a lot of the times. So yeah, if you feel like you know people that are Jezebel like, I wouldn't say always go. Sometimes, a lot of times you do have to go no contact, which I do with a lot of my family and the people attached to my family, and then where you have to have less contact, because when they have more contact, they try to get control, and it's just a waste of time, because my life and your life is not depicted by Jezebel. It's depicted by the Jesus and the Holy Spirit and God. And then yeah, if you're under that spirit, ask God for forgiveness. Ask God to show you the direction you need to be swimming in and walking in, and show him that you want to change and that you have an intention to change, and ask the Holy Spirit to help guide you. So God bless you, God keep you, God be with you. Enjoy your day.